Here. The next item on our agenda is a presentation by both the, sorry about that, the Contra Costa Water District and East Bay Utility District. Which of you two fine gentlemen? John, are you going first? Please come up and.
And do I need the mouse? Great. I need the mouse so I can get this going here. I'm not a proficient
John,
PowerPoint
if I may take a minute before you get started or while you're getting started. Sure. I think we are really looking forward, particularly under the news of the last 3, 4, 5 months and even more recently, to hearing from each of you who provide water to half of our city, respectively. Ballpark, it's probably a little different than that. And I'm sure you have a lot of important and both helpful information to convey to us and to the community. And one of the values of having you at the first part of the agenda is that we can let other people know who watch us on TV or want to do it online later on, that there are some things that they should be listening to with regard to what you have to tell us. So we're looking forward to hearing from both you and Joe.
Well, Mayor Simmons and council members, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak to you again. And I know Director Campbell, President Campbell and I came last year, and our water situation clearly has not gotten any better. I think everybody is well aware of that. I just wanted people to understand, looking at the screen, you can see where our storage is in today. We're at 53% of capacity, which is much lower than we should be. Our goal, just from a perspective, is on September 30th, is to have 500,000 acre feet of water in our reservoirs. Right now, we're looking at about having 330,000 acre feet of water in our current circumstances. And if it's a dry year next year, it'll be even lower. We're going to be at actually holding capacity at some of the lowest we've ever had in our history at East Bay Mud. And clearly, we're both hoping for rain and snow to be able to get us out of the situation that we're in. And, you know, it was wet this year. In December, it was great. We had over 200% precipitation in the coastal range. In our case, we receive most of our water from the Sierra Nevadas, as does much of the state. And when we were getting hit by all the rain in December, it was not turning into rain nor snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Basically, the clouds dried out before they made it across the valley. And so we were fortunate we were able to capture that water locally. But and it got us through. We went through then the driest January of record in California's history. February was below average, and March was the 5th driest March ever in California's history. And as a result of that, we are looking where we are right now. We are going to rank as the 2nd driest year ever in our service area. The driest was 1977, and if you lived here then, that was the year of all droughts were measured by. And clearly, we beat it, but barely beat it, but we beat it. But we're again in the 4th year of a drought. So this shows you where we're looking at from in terms of storage, where we need to be. It shows you what our averages are and what our deficit is, and where we'll be conceivably next September 30th. Statistically, we could get another 7 inches of rain between now and June, and that would put us about equal to where we were a year ago at this point in time. Could it happen? Yes. Will it happen? The likelihood is not that will not happen, because each day, as it decreases the chance of more precipitation, we found this year we only had 3 large storms, tropical expresses, come through here, and the other ones that we had in between were insufficient really to do much good for anybody. In the Sierra Nevadas, when the governor was up there 3 weeks ago at Echo on Highway 50, there should have been 6 feet of snow. There was 0. 60% of all the water in the state comes from the snowpack, and we would normally rely on snowmelt now into July to fill Pardee Reservoir, and there is no snow in our watershed to fill Pardee Reservoir. So we asked for people last year to save 13% based on their 2013 baseline. We have been asked by the state. They initially said 20%. They lowered it to 16%. We're going to keep our goal at 20% savings for this year, because we don't know what's going to happen for next year. So essentially what people need to do is they need to save about 6% more than they saved last year in order from the to meet the 2013 threshold for us to achieve our 20% saving goal on water needs here in our service area. Governor's statewide reduction. What he did as an edict, as an executive order, is going to be codified by the State Water Resources Control Board. They're going to hold hearings on May 5th and 6th in Sacramento. May 6th, the State Water Board will be issuing its orders. Those orders, under the governor's executive powers of the state constitution, are binding. And Felicia Marcus, who chairs the State Water Resources Control Board, told me if agencies don't adhere to it, they're going to pay the price of potentially $10,000 a day a fine if they don't meet their goals. And if we go into a dry year next year, basically what she said is you haven't seen anything yet. And essentially what you're probably looking at, if we go into a dry year again next year, any outdoor landscape watering will be illegal in the state of California at that point in time. So our 20% cutback, we were at stage 3, a severe drought. We've now moved as of last week to stage 4, which is a critical drought, which is going to require us to bring in, because based on, again, what our storage capacity will be on September 30th, anticipation. We have our mandatory restriction of reducing by water 20%. We started a week ago Wednesday importing water from our Freeport facility, and that is part of the 25% surcharge that all East Bay Mud ratepayers are now paying, or will start paying, after July 1. That water is coming from our federal water contract, 33,000 acre feet. We have water transfers that will hopefully make up the difference of between 33,000 acre feet and 65,000 acre feet. That will really be a critical difference for us in terms of what shape we're in next year. We did turn on Freeport last year and brought in 24,000 acre feet, first time we ever used the facility, which cost $942 million. And that basically gave us 6 weeks of water. Had we not brought that water in last year, we would have been looking at 25% rationing this past summer versus the 15% rationing that we had. So as you can see, it's going to cost money for us to importing the water in. We have to pay for the water in addition to the cost of moving the water and treating the water. That is what the 25% surcharge that all ratepayers are going to pay in order to make sure that we have an adequate supply and hopefully get us through to next year, and hopefully it'll be a wet year. What you can see up there is what's been imposed by the state, and in our service area, there's now no watering allowed between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. That includes cities, as well as people's homes. You need to wait 48 hours after it rains, a measurable rain, to turn on your irrigation system. It is now illegal, and the city will be fined potentially if they water their grass, ornamental turf, between streets and sidewalks. And all new buildings are going to require the most up-to-date drip irrigation in order to be approved. A lot of this is from the state. And then again, we had previously imposed that you have to turn off fountains unless it's recirculated water, and you can't use your hose to wash down the driveway and sidewalk. That's what your arms are for, a leaf blower or a broom. We are not right now in a position, nor are we really looking at where we're going to impose $500 a day fines on customers. That is allowed now by the governor's executive order. Actually, it's encouraged. We're hoping that people will learn through education. If people are using water and wasting water, we ask that they be, you call, there's a number at East Bay Mud or on the webpage to identify who and where the water's being wasted. We will go meet with the people, educate them about what's happening and how they can reduce it, and offer them alternatives to how they can reduce their water so that they're not going to be put in that position. Ultimately, after the third time, if they're an egregious user of water, we will and have in the past turn off their water, and we have that right to do that. And it has been done in the past, and if somebody refuses to try and save water in any such way and they're wasting it and people are complaining, after the third time, their water will be turned off. So what's this going to cost you? It's going to be about an average household increase of $12 a month. If you use an excessive amount of water, and this is, I don't agree with the board decision on this. I think it should have been dealt with on geographic areas looking at heat and lot, because we do have that knowledge, and we are going to be doing a study next year to actually start looking at climate-based rates, but we haven't done it yet. If you use over 972 gallons of water a day per household, as of July 1, you will be charged then $2 per unit over that. A unit is 748 gallons. So your water bill, in addition to what the 25% surcharge is and the 8% rate increase, you're then looking at potentially another $2 per unit you're going to pay above it. And again, the drought surcharge is only temporary, in that once we turn off our Freeport system and go through that water that we brought into our system, then the 25% surcharge will go away at that point in time. I can answer any questions you have, and I know I invited all of you to my ward briefing on May 20th. I hope to see you at the Walnut Creek Library that day, and if there are any questions that I can answer for you, or if you want to have President Campbell's presentation and then do it that way, whatever works best for you.
Let me just suggest that, are there questions specific to the East Bay Mud area?
I actually think I'd rather
Hear
ask the
both,
same
yeah.
questions of both, because
Yeah,
many of them
yeah.
will be duplicative.
So let's go ahead and hear from Joseph Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you.
But don't go away.
Okay, he's not going to go away. Well, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thanks for having me. I would say that you couldn't imagine the demands on our time that's been recently, but I think you could imagine it. This is, I think, the third talk I've given in 3 days, and they've all been by request. And we'll see what we can lay out for you here. How do we get this to move? No, okay. All right, mine works different than yours, John. You had the PDF, and we have the good stuff. Yeah. All right. First of all, let's let's talk a little bit about who we serve. I'll tell you a little bit about how the Contra Costa Water District got started. The Victoria you're looking at there is it's a north-south direction, and on the right-hand side of the Victoria would be east. The left, of course, is to the west. Originally, when the water district started in 1936, there was industry along that river, and they were drawing their water out of the river. We've all heard the stories that in the old days, the early days, before the turn of the century, that the sailing vessels would sail into San Francisco Bay to fill their fresh water tanks. And as time went on, and it continues to go on, seawater, where freshwater and seawater meet, it keeps getting further and further to the east. And so in 1936, when the Shasta project was built, and that's the generating plants and all of those things, and the big canals that brought the water further to the south, there was a group of people that convinced the federal government to build the Contra Costa Canal. That's the one we all walk on. You see that depicted there in the blue on the chart. So the reason the business convinced them to do that is because they changed their intakes. Rather than pull it out of the river, they drew it out of the canal. And the reason they wanted to draw it out of the canal is because the intake for the canal is to the far right of that particular Victoria you're looking at. So they get a fresher supply and a more reliable supply of water that they could use. Who would have known that all these years later there'd be 500,000 people living in the district now? And so there's water plants and there's distribution for domestic water, as well as the original just raw water. Our situation is a little bit different than East Bay Mud's, in that we are federal contractors. The only storage we have is Los Vaqueros, and I'll tell you why Los Vaqueros was built. The water quality continues to deteriorate in the Delta, and that's where we draw the water from. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the water is delivered to us under contract from the federal government. So when the Los Vaqueros was built, so we'd have dilution water, so we can combine the Los Vaqueros water with the water that's imported from the Delta. But the trick of it working is when Los Vaqueros is filled during the snow melt, the Delta has a tendency to clear itself out, so that's when the district will harvest the water, put it in Los Vaqueros, and use it for blending later on. So I think people that are watching, they have a pretty good idea who's served by Contra Costa Water. This is just a little pictorial for you to draw some attention to the situation all across California. The blue line you see at the top is the wettest year in history, and the next line down is an average year. That's the black colored line. The yellow is where we were 2 years ago, and the green is where we were last year, and you see the pink line that is not yet completed. That's where we are now. And if that line continues out like the other lines, it's going to come in right in between 2 years ago and last year. So that's where we're at on precipitation. The driest times ever, which I won't get into, Director Coleman described that, but the bottom two lines is the driest years in the history of the district, in the history of the precipitation. Los Vaqueros storage, if we did not enact a 25% reduction, we would be where the green line is showing at the bottom at the end of the district's year. The 25% we're projecting will come in right where you see it. And the danger of getting down to the numbers on the left is the number of acre feet. Los Vaqueros is a 120,000 acre foot reservoir. It was expanded from 100,000 about 2 years ago. But if we get down in that 60 category, we're getting very close to the emergency supply of water. Emergency means if something catastrophic happened, like the levee failed, or let's say a train turned over in the delta and contaminated the delta, that we would only have a source of water from Los Vaqueros, and that's it. That's what emergency is. So if we don't do the 25% conservation, we get very close to that, and that's very, very dangerous. The Bureau of Reclamation, follow me on this if you will. We get our water from the Bureau. We don't have the Sierra runoff like East Bay Mud does. We get our water from the Bureau of Reclamation. We got an allocation this year. I think it was in February. They gave us 25% of our historical use. 25% is what we got. Now, the water that we used for blending previously, to blend with the bad water, the 25% that we're going to be unallocated from the federal government, the water that we used for blending in the past was deducted from that 25%. So local money built the reservoir, and they deducted the water that we used for blending, so that the 25% was diluted even more. And we bought a transfer. We bought some water from East Contra Costa Irrigation District, and because we got that water, they deducted that as well. Now that's our partners with the federal government. Let me tell you, we have a contract to buy 195,000 acre feet of water each year. That's the contract we have. The most we've ever bought is about 140, but the contract requires we pay for the 195 whether we use it or not. So that's who we're dealing with. Now that's not exclusive to Contra Costa Water. That's done all across his land. Everybody that has federal contracts has to pay for the water whether they get it or not. That's the way they work it. We've talked about desalination. You should know this, that Contra Costa Water District, Alameda County Water District, Zone 7, San Francisco PUC, and who's the fifth one, John? East Bay Mud. Yeah. We got together starting about 8 years ago. This has been a while. We got together and we partnered and we took our great minds, and between us we have some good scientists and PhDs, and we built a small desalination plant out in West Pittsburgh, Bay Point as it's called today. That the idea was to build studies and find out what we could do with Z-Sal, and we did that. The 5 agencies got together. The studies were recently completed, and we already know that it cost about $1,600 an acre foot, which is about 400% more than customers are paying right now if we went to desal. But the project is too big for us. Quite frankly, it's too big. Historically, desal plants are shut down during the plentiful water times because there's a 75% discount to the consumer if you shut the plant down and you go back to surface storage. So in the meantime, you borrowed the money, you built the plant, the debt goes on, you buy a new car, you have to pay the bill even if you park it in your garage. So the study's available, and we're all waiting breathlessly for somebody to come in and say, hey, can we see your study? But that hasn't occurred yet. The incentives to do local projects is at times at risk when the government comes and takes the water on a project that you built. And you should know that we have MOUs right now with East Bay Mud and Alameda County Water District. We are already permitted to change Los Vaqueros from 160,000 acre feet to 275 right now. We're already permitted to do that. and Mudd and Alameda County have joined with us. We're exploring those opportunities now. Where it goes, I don't know. I think we probably all have in mind where is the incentive, and those are the things we passed on to the governor. When you do things like that, you take the incentive out of local investment. The baseline that we have to work with, I won't get too detailed on that because Director Coleman laid it out to you quite well. The deduction is for us is 25% from the 2013 baseline. Originally, we had a drought plan in place, and we were ready to go, and the governor trumped it. I'm going to tell you how I found out about it. I'm driving down the road on Clayton Road over in the Concord area, and I hear the governor on the radio, and as Director Coleman described, he's standing on some bare land, and he says, I'm standing on bare land, which normally should have 6 foot of snow here right now. So I'm going to declare a 25% emergency for all people across the board to reduce across the whole state. And that's why I signed this executive order this morning. He already had it signed. And allegedly he was going up to observe what the snowpack was, but he had signed the order before he got there. So it would have been helpful if the districts had got a heads up on it. Our staff didn't know about it. We contacted the Association of California Water Agencies, which Mr. Coleman did not mention to you. He happens to be the president of the California Association of Water Agencies. That's all of us combined. And they didn't get a heads up either. So that's what we're dealing with was his surprises. This is unprecedented. It's the first time in the history of the state that there's been a mandatory reduction in executive order. As Mr. Coleman had pointed out, it's lawful and he can do that. Now, we have kind of a couple of challenges to that. One is, I'll tell you a story of my own, and I think all of us can relate to it, and people at home certainly can. I bought a home in 2005, and I think some of you might know Terry Camp, the architect, the landscape architect. I had him come out and design for us an efficient system for our yard. And so we hired a professional, and we tore our yard down to bare dirt. We tore every sprinkler out. We tore it. Literally every plant, every tree came out, and we started from scratch. And we put in $34,000 it cost me to put in that system, and we have the drip system. Mr. Coleman has a drip system in his home too. And this drip system is not above ground. The water doesn't contact with air. It actually drips right onto the plant. And the result of that was we had rented the home for a year to a single lady living there by herself, and my wife and I became 2 occupants. And at the end of that, we had reduced the water consumption from her by 60%. That's how effective it was. Now, with the governor's order, the way he initiated it, and you'll appreciate this, I've had hundreds of people tell me, and Mr. Coleman's probably had it too, I've already conserved, and now we're being penalized on top of the conservation, and that's what an order like that does. So, he came out with some tiers, and it says, well, some cities or areas, I won't say cities, some areas have had less use per capita than others, so they changed all these things around a bit, and that's how they wound up with 16%. That's how we wound up with 25 based on some formula. And then Sunday morning, another surprise again, I picked up the Contra Costa Times, and I saw that ours was changed to 28. I had no knowledge of it. I saw it when I read it in the paper. It was released to the press before it was released to the water districts. But the reason they put the tiers in is to try to dilute some of this complaint about I've already conserved. Think about this. If the 25 had stayed, would that mean, I mean, this is run through my mind, would that mean that the people that manufacture oil out here for us, gasoline for us out here, does that mean they would have to cut back because they cut their water supply 25% and their cooling towers what doesn't work? Does that mean people that are in manufacturing and industry would be laid off because the businesses don't have the water? So that was the reason that the tiers were put in to try to dilute that. Right now, the allocation for industry, I think, is 5%, John. And so they took care of that. Irrigation's golf courses. Your golf courses cut back 40%. But the golf people have told me that they can't water just 2 days a week, that everything will die. So the one golf course, I've had direct contact with Diablo Hills or Diablo Creek out in Concord. They said they need to water more than 2 days a week, but they can make the 40%. Excuse me, it's Oakhurst Country Club. They said they can make the 40%, but they can't be restricted to 2 days a week. They need to have a more flexible schedule. They'll still make the 40%, so that's what they're going to do. So they'll water center fairways. They'll protect their greens. I think the greens have been exempted recently anyway. So those are the kind of things that's going to happen. This is an analogy and an approach to us. If you'd follow me through with this, any of you remember the oil embargo in the 70s? Yeah, everybody's nodding their head. Let's just say this. You're waiting in line for gasoline, and there's an attendant there that says, okay, we're going to give you 5 gallons of gasoline. And it's $3 a gallon for 5 gallons of gasoline. But if you buy 20 gallons of gasoline, it's $5 a gallon. May seem unfair to that person, 3 versus 5 on 5 gallons versus 20 gallons, but the person in the back of the line kind of likes that. Because if everybody took 20, there wouldn't be anybody in the back of the line that would get gas. So our approach is going to be along that line. If you reduce your use in our district by 25%, we're talking about the household now, if they reduce 25%, their bill will go down. If they stay the way they are, they're going to pay the higher price per unit. So the idea is we don't want to fleece you for your money. We don't want to charge you $5 instead of $3. We don't want you to take the gas. That's the bottom line. We'd rather you don't take the water. So you know about the prohibitations. I think Director Coleman covered that very well. So there's no point in getting to that. There's just one other thing that you should know, and I think East Bay Mud's going to look at this too. We do have some rebates for taking lawn out and putting other things in. We went out and got some grants to do that. We have a high efficiency clothes washer rebate as well, and PG&E's given some stuff out too. So everybody's trying as hard as they can to get some relief on this situation. So there's a number there on the screen to get more information, and we're trying as hard as we can to do a public outreach as is East Bay, and so that's where we're at. So you let us know how you want to handle these questions, and we'll respond.
I think what we'll do in terms of questions, and thank you, Joseph and John, is that we'll go through the council members, starting with Councilmember Silva, and just come forward, and if you can both be there, if it's a question that relates to both.
We're here, Mayor. We wouldn't.
I
have
know.
been
If one of you, if it's a question that relates to both of you, and one of you answers, and the other one's okay with that, we can just go on. So, Councilmember Silva.
This isn't our first rodeo.
I know. It won't be the last either.
Thank you so much for the presentations, and it's interesting to realize that you have different strategies depending on your district, so thank you for explaining the two strategies. I'm going to start with the tough question first. So the courts ruled yesterday or the day before that San Juan Capistrano cannot use a tiered rate structure for water.
It's actually not a tough question. Go ahead.
That's the San Juan Capistrano decision. The courts rendered in the Fourth Appellate Court
Can you
yesterday.
talk into the microphone?
Sure, it's the Fourth Appellate Court decision out of San Juan Capistrano yesterday. Essentially, what they said is you need to make sure you can justify through a cost of service study why you have the tiered pricing. What happened in San Juan Capistrano, they did not do a study, or they didn't do a study based on the metrics that are normally used, and the court ruled that it was an invalid study, therefore the tiered pricing is not valid. A lot of agencies, including East Bay Mud, have tiered pricing, and the attorneys feel that at East Bay Mud and other agencies that we're on safe ground in terms of that. So the bottom line is, if you haven't done a cost of service study and you can't justify why you have it, then you will have it potentially thrown out in the court unless another appellate court rules or the state Supreme Court weighs in on that.
Just add that I agree with that, and Contra Costa Water District has done extensive study, and we charge fee for service. The ruling was that it was arbitrary fees.
So, numerous residents, it is the topic of conversation, which is great. But what can they do now, between now and June, to actually conserve water, particularly if they already have, short of turning off the water on the grass, which I'm looking at my front lawn going, well, it's time.
Well, I can speak for our district. We know that 80% of all water used in the entire state of California goes to ag. But this year, the ag people with federal contracts get zero, so that metric is going to change. But we know in our district that about half of all use is outdoor use. So that's where the governor's looking to cut, and that's where we'll be looking to. You need to cut down on your outdoor watering. so many of us already changed toilets and shower heads and all of that stuff, but that's what you can do now. You want to add to that?
In East Bay Mud Service area on this side of the hills in the summer, about 70% of the usage in summer is outdoor usage. Bottom line is if you have water going into your gutter in your street, you're using too much water. And you need to find out how you either fix your irrigation system or reduce it and decide which things you want to keep and not keep. You don't have to let your yard die. You need to be very strategic on how you do it. I have a clock, and it's not set to go off at any point in time. I look at what the weather is, I look at what it has been, what it's forecasted to be, and then I make a decision on whether or not I'll turn the clock on, and I run it at 1 in the morning so it sits in the ground as long as possible, and the roots get the water, and rather than where people run it at, in the afternoon, which is now illegal anyways. Think smart.
I run my timer at midnight for 5 minutes, and I run it again at 4 o'clock in the morning for 5 minutes, and the same effect that John is describing to get the maximum soak.
Thank you.
Councilmember Riddell. Councilmember Carlston.
I'm going to follow up on what Councilmember Silva asked. I, like you, had done all of the water saving and converting and drip irrigation and so forth. What is there left to do other than to lose your lawn?
Well, I think Director Coleman answered that question. You can water to the point that it won't die. If you don't water at all, it probably will die. But you can cut back to the watering to an extent, and it'll be brown. It won't be pretty, but it takes more of a dormant state than a dying state.
One thing we do at our house, we have a bucket in the shower. That water that to warm up is collected. It collects soap when you take a Navy shower, which we use. There's a bucket in our sink in our kitchen for washing hands, vegetables, or fruit. That water all goes into the potted plants. I don't use a hose on any potted plants. It's all used that way, and it's really simple things. And as simple as it sounds, when the use of the toilet, flush when it's necessary. And it's amazing. If you haven't changed out your toilet, you're talking 7 gallons per flush of water each time. It's simple things can be done.
Now, do each of you have a website that the residents can go to and get these suggestions on what
we
to
have
do?
a website. I'll also bring your attention to the phone
Could
number
you
that's
provide
on.
the website so that
Yeah,
it's...
I will. I'll bring your attention to the phone number there on the screen as well. Homeowners can call the district now. I think we charge ratepayers something like 2.5 cents a year on their bill. And that goes into a fund where there's surveyors that can come to your house and they can answer specifically for you the questions you just asked me about what can I do now. That is available. And that number's on the screen, and the website is ccwater.com. ccwater.com.
East Bay Mud, we also have a dedicated conservation program. We're actually ramping it up and bringing on more temporary staff during this period to accommodate the amount of requests that we're receiving, and they'll come to your home as well. It's www.ebmud.com. This is fine. It's if somebody wants to call me, my cell phone number is 510-590-0238, and I'll put them in touch with the right people who need to address what their issues are.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Sure.
So
Councilmember Silva.
on the development side, and on the public agency side, one of you said it is no longer legal to water grass in medians. I had heard it was no longer legal to water medians.
It's ornamental turf, and ornamental turf is considered lawn.
So a lot of what we've done already is convert from grass to drought-tolerant plants in our medians. So hopefully our medians will continue to be looking good.
They need to look good, and I'm not going to say which street it was on, but recently I went through downtown Walnut Creek during the afternoon, and the water was running, and it was running on the street. That happens in every city, by the way, and it happens in neighborhoods as well. So people, you just need to look at the clocks, fix the clocks, and have somebody go through and look at each irrigation system and where it's running and is it running properly.
Just let you know, that occurred just in his area of the city. That doesn't happen in my area.
Actually, it did occur in East Bay Mud area.
And you had comments about you can run fountains if they have recirculating systems on them. So is East Bay Mud and Contra Costa Water contacting the owners of properties with fountains? And I don't mean residential. I mean, we have commercial properties that have fountains, and inquiring about that, or is that something that they need to learn themselves?
We are encouraging people to shut the shower or to shut the fountains off, but it's not prohibited if they're recirculating, but we are encouraging them to shut them down.
Yeah, and the same thing. If you can save water, you know, the biggest savings is going to come from single-family homes. And that's where the governor's executive order came, and that's what's forcing all the agencies. Office parks and things like that, their reduction is much lower as issued by the governor. And so they need to find where they can do it. And a fountain is going to use water, and it's going to evaporate. So if it's not needed, it should be turned off.
Thank you.
So to staying with the turf item for a minute, and I think you talked about how it'd be illegal to water the medians, grass in the medians, and grass between the sidewalk and the curb. Is that just in your area?
That's under the governor's executive order.
So across the street, we have a large turf area, but we also have grass in some areas between the sidewalk and the curb.
You should turn it off.
You both talked about, outside use. When you were giving us those estimates, what I hadn't heard you talk about was pools, and what % of that is pools, and there's nothing in either the governor's executive order or otherwise that's dealing with pools. Is that right?
No, the governor, yes, you're right. The governor gave a lot of flexibility in some areas to agencies. A pool uses about the same amount of water as a lawn. So on a hot day, about an inch of your pool is going to evaporate, and that's going to be, depending on the size of the pool, several thousand gallons. If somebody has a pool, they should have a pool cover on it. It's absolutely insane in today's crisis that we're in, and it is a crisis, and if it continues on, it's a severe crisis, that they don't cover their pool. And they should be shamed into doing that because it's something very simple to do.
And a few weeks ago, we had some discussions with Central Sanitary District about they're working on use of scalper plants. And is that of value from a water use standpoint? And if so, are either of you working with them? And if so, what are you doing?
Well, I think we probably work closer with Central Sand than East Bay Mud, maybe not. And I'm thinking that from the logic of proximity, but they do go down well deep into the East Bay Mud area as well. I can tell you that per capita, more water, recycled water, is used in Contra Costa Water District than any other water agency in the Bay Area, and that's due primarily to the Diablo Sanitary District. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Shell sold a jet pipeline to Central Sand for $1 here about 10, 12 years ago. And they're pumping some recycled water through that, and some of the golf courses are picking it up along the way. It runs from Martinez to the Oakland Airport. I'm not too sure what their distribution system is on that, but they have that. The big one for us is going to be the Port Chicago Naval Weapons Station. That's going to be a massive project, and it'll be a model for everybody in the United States to study. There will actually be separate water systems built into that, and there will be the purple-colored pipe, which will be the reclaimed water going down the street, and then there will be the domestic water as well. The city is, I think they're down to their final 2 master developers that they're picking right now, but you'll see that in the future as well.
We work closely with Central Sand as well. Actually, we're doing a project with them at Diablo Country Club, which uses a lot of water for the golf course. And the country club came to both Central Sand and East Bay Mud, and they're going to be funding a project. And we're going to work with them as well as Central Sand on some of the funding to build a scalping plant on site. So all the wastewater that is coming out of Delta Diablo, and the scalping plant is about the size of a trailer, the long haul trailer. They will be taking that product and then creating recycled water, and that's going to be feeding their golf course. And so basically what's being produced by the homes and the country club itself is going to become a source of water at the country club, and we're going to need to see more of that. I talked with somebody several weeks ago at the Defense Department, and the DOD is now given the ability for use of the technology on recycled water that has been used in Afghanistan and Iraq because all the bases use recycled water for drinking, and that technology is now going to become available in this country to where it's going to be essentially you can be able to create little facilities for doing just that, where it's safe to drink, and it is safe to drink if it's treated the proper way.
Okay. I have one more question, but Councilmember Carlson had one more too.
City of Wichita Falls in Texas has been in a severe drought for many, many years. They have the recycling of virtually all of their water. Have you been in contact with them?
Well, no, but I know what they're doing is going to happen in California, and it's going to gross some people out. It's called direct potable use, and basically their purple pipes go to the drinking fountains and into their homes. The State Water Resources Control Board is conducting studies now to see how and when we can connect the purple pipe, the recycled water, directly to the main line or to the lines that are our potable supply. What they're trying to solve is if there's a technological glitch on the wastewater side, they need to make sure that that water does not get brought into the drinking water supply. I'll put money on it. Within 5 years, there will be places in California that are going to be using what their drinking water is going to be what's also came from the wastewater treatment plant.
Pardon?
I recall hearing that one of the cities in Orange County has been working.
So Orange County Water takes 100 million gallons of wastewater a day. They treat it to a tertiary level, and it gets put into their aquifer, and that is about a third of their drinking water supply is basically coming from that source alone.
So I think my final question, I'm going to ask you to sort of suspend time for a minute and pretend that you're here in 2050. And instead of being in the 5th or 6th year of the drought, we're in the 40th year of a drought. And just think for a minute, okay, you're the managers of 2 important water districts in Contra Costa County, and you have the chance to have a moment of conversation with somebody that's standing where you are right now. What would you tell them to do differently than what we're proposing?
I would tell them to build storage. The biggest storage reservoir that this state has is snowpack. Snowpack holds more water than all reservoirs in the state combined. The snowpack reservoir is disappearing due to global warming, climate change, and this district or this state needs to facilitate building storage. That's what I would say. And also I would look at desalinization on a larger project where local districts aren't expected to try to figure that, or no, I shouldn't say figure it out, but finance it all by themselves.
I would agree with Joe. If we're standing here in 40 years and then we're still looking at this as a problem, that meant we didn't do our job, and that's my biggest fear and concern. If we come out of the drought next year or the year after, I can guarantee you the folks in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento are going to forget we were ever in a drought. And the fact is some directors at some water agencies are going to forget we're ever in a drought as well. It's really incumbent upon everybody now why we're in the drought, and when we come out of the drought, to have the political will and backbone to have additional storage above ground and below ground, desalinization where appropriate, recycled water, and looking at new technologies that can be able to move and create water and how we use water efficiently in this state. Again, my concern is that we go out of the drought, the people who are sometimes the funding source or the leaders, quote unquote, in California and Washington, are going to forget where we were, and we're going to be back here in 10 years saying, oh my God, why didn't we do this?
Thank you very much. And Director Coleman and Director Campbell, thank you for taking your time and coming and talking to us about this important topic. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.